listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS podcast listeners. In this episode, we're going to talk to Anna, and Anna's going to share with us how she passed the IELTS, why she's taking the IELTS, and where she's going to go to next. So, welcome to the show, Anna. How are you today?
Fine, I'm great. And you?
I'm good, I'm good. Okay, so as we just established, you're from Israel, and
Right.
Could you tell us why you're taking the IELTS exam?
I think it's basically the same with every interview you do. The aims of immigration. We are hoping to immigrate to Canada later on, and it was essential to pass the IELTS and get the high score in order to get as much points as we can. So I needed at least to get 8 in listening and 7 in all the rest of the parts. And it was not so simple as I first thought.
What happened?
It was challenging.
What happened the first time you took the exam?
Basically, I didn't know anything about the exam, and I started to prepare myself mentally by listening to podcasts, and just out of nowhere, I just found your podcast, and I wasn't at the stage of preparation even. It was just mentally preparing, getting to know what is IELTS, and I listened to other interviews. And I started to realize what is going to be about, that it's not just an English exam to evaluate your English knowledge, that you can come and demonstrate your English abilities, but it's an exam that you have to be prepared to, because most of the people who go to this exam, if they are not ready for it, they fail. And even before registering to the exam, I realized that part, and I started to prepare myself, to do some tests, to read articles, to time myself, and it wasn't easy. I honestly thought I'm not capable of getting a good score, not in reading, not in anything, because I wasn't prepared for the times, and the reading was too much to read, and then to think about the questions, because I didn't know any of the tips and the tricks. I later managed to. I later learned on your using your. You have this package of.
The courses.
Yeah. How do you call it? And the most challenging part was obviously writing for me.
Yes.
I used you have a package of sending essays, and the girls were checking it for me, and it was extremely helpful because I paid money, so I felt that I must do, and even if I was a little bit lazy from time to time, I was receiving emails. They were that I was told, keep in mind 24 hours, and you have to submit to the next article, and don't be late. So I was like, it was a shame to be late. So I tried to do my best, and my first exam wasn't so good.
Hang on a second, Anna.
Yeah.
I just want to mention a few things for the listeners, because maybe they're at a similar stage to how you were when you started preparing, because you mentioned some really valid points about the fact that you might have a good English, a good level of English, but that does not mean you are prepared for the exam. Because
not at all.
we said this before, like there's the exam, it's going to test your language skills and your IELTS exam skills, the specific skills you need to develop to pass the exam. And this is just one thing that I repeated a few times, but it's still, because I know for a fact that if my sister, who's now living in the UK, and she's lived in the UK all her life, except for 5 years when she lived in Australia, but if she took the exam tomorrow, she's going to fail. Even though she's a native English speaker, she's going to fail because she doesn't have the specific exam skills. So, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And then the other thing I was going to say about the essay correction service and the feedback, you mentioned a point that really resonated with me. It's like, okay, I know that sometimes I can be lazy, but I paid for this service. And I know this about myself because when I get a gym subscription or a pack of classes, I go for the unlimited one, which is just like a pack, maybe it's yoga, so I'll buy a monthly subscription. And I know that if I've paid for that, I'm going to use it,
Right.
And I think the similar situation for you, plus the messages of encouragement, of moving fast, no?
Plus the correction tips and the mistakes I repeated to doing them. But in the first, I honestly felt that my essays weren't good at all. And I felt it through the feedback. And even in the writing process, it took me forever, maybe an hour and a half for the task two. And I always thought that even in my native tongue, in Russian, if I was given to write an essay, I'm not so good in writing generally. So not to speak in foreign language. It was extremely uneasy for me, so I abandoned that. And my husband told me, just go to the exam for the first time and see how it goes and the atmosphere and etc. And then you'll repeat that. And so I abandoned the writing and I started to focus on my speaking because I didn't have anyone to speak to. So I started to go to private lessons in speaking.
Right.
And then I got a nice score in speaking, 7.5 on my first attempt.
Excellent.
6 on the writing because I abandoned that after 10 essays. But I got the principles, the basics, what I need, but it was just, it seemed to me then that it's a mission impossible. And in my reading I got 8 and in the listening I got 7.5.
Excellent scores.
So that was the first attempt, and it wasn't good enough for the points I needed. And then I started just writing every day. I heard it in some podcast of yours, I think. Someone said, you asked him, what tip would you give to others? And he said, you need to write an essay a day. One essay or even 2 if you can a day. So I started to write task 1, task 2 every day for, I don't know, my gosh, a month or 2, maybe 2 months, I think.
Excellent. Good
About
work.
40 essays, and not all of them were checked by. Some of them were checked, and some of them I just wrote to myself without corrections and just threw that away. But virtually, I covered every subject, and they started to repeat. The topics started to repeat.
Yeah.
So I gained vocabulary, specific vocabulary on virtually every subject a little bit. And on the second exam, it was amazing because I abandoned my speaking. So I told myself, I'm good in speaking. I got 7.5 in the first attempt. So I'll focus on my writing. And I got 7.5 on the writing, and I even got 5 minutes left with after the check-in and everything. I had 5 minutes spare. It was amazing because the fluency of I just wrote without any hesitation. It was just naturally something, an easy topic. I got an easy topic about presents or something like that, but it was just natural to me.
Wow, that's fantastic, Anna.
But
Okay.
because of my speaking, I neglected that part. I thought I was so superb in speaking, and I got 6.5 in speaking, and I needed
Oh
7.
no.
And
Oh.
in the reading, I got 9 in reading,
Wow.
and both listening 9.
Wow.
So I only needed the 0.5 in speaking, and I was devastated because of this 0.5. It ruined all the score for me.
Oh no.
And I went for the remark.
Okay. Before we talk about the remark, can we
Yeah.
just rewind and go back to the writing? Because you said that you had 5 minutes to spare, and that was
Yeah.
even after checking. I mean,
Checking.
yeah. So you'd written both essays, and you checked them both for mistakes that you made before.
And I spent 5 minutes on each one, making notes what I'm going to write. So the actual
you
writing
followed.
was
Sorry,
yeah.
you followed like the sentence guide, the instructions from the course where it's like plan out. Ah, right, gotcha. Okay.
I followed all the tips, almost. I try to make it more personal, to write in personal
Of course.
style.
Yeah, of
But
course.
the template was amazing. I used it a lot.
Excellent.
And it helped me. So it went. I knew exactly how to build my paragraphs and how long to write, and I knew how to estimate my words so it won't be too short or nor too long. I controlled myself. I knew I was totally prepared after this 2 months of writing every day. I honestly, maybe if I got in topic about philosophical something or political, which I'm not familiar with, the topics itself, but every other topics I felt like prepared. I can do this. And it was thanks to your help. It was amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. No, thank you very
It
much.
seemed impossible for me at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then it seemed too easy. So if I could do it, I would just want to say, if I could do it, and my English is not so perfect, anyone can do it.
Wow, that's great.
With the
Anna.
right preparation and right guidance.
Yeah. Well, I'd just like to mention there's 2 things before we talk about what happened when you asked for a remark for the speaking.
Yeah.
Before we got into that, I just want to say 2 things to the listeners. That one, there's the template and the strategy. It definitely helps, and what also obviously helps is doing an essay every single day, because I'd just like to explain what I think has happened, and Anna would probably agree, is that you use that system and that process that's taught in the course and the template, you used it so many times that it becomes natural.
Automatic.
Right? Yeah, and you're not even thinking about it anymore. So now you can just solely focus on your writing and start writing the work rather than thinking about building paragraphs and ideas and construction. Now that part becomes automatic, so you can just focus on basically the topic, which might be environmentalism, it might be gender equality, it might be education, it might be whatever. But because you've done it so many times, it's automatic. You're not even thinking about it anymore. You've almost got like the muscle memory, because you've been doing it so often. And then because you had the intelligence and the tenacity and the ambition to write an essay every single day, like you said, you've covered all topics, you left no stone unturned, and you had vocabulary for these. So not only did you know the methodology for writing the essay, you're also broadly familiar with the topics and the vocabulary that comes with the topics. And I think you probably agree, that's why you managed with 5 minutes to spare at the end. Yeah. And what did you do for those 5 minutes? I'm kind of curious.
Actually, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I went back to the task 1,
Yeah.
and I realized that I hurried too much and I didn't cover the first bullet correctly. I answered something else.
Ooh.
Yeah, so, but I knew it was only 5 minutes and there is no time to rewrite it. So I just left at that. But
Okay.
who knows? Maybe I could have got 8. But 7.0 is enough for me. So
Yeah, that's still a very good score. So well done there. Now, can you tell us what happened with your speaking remark?
yeah, I was devastated because I got speaking cue card. My cue card was about taxes. Tell me a good tax that in your country, and it was I was totally blank.
Oh no!
I couldn't. I went too deep into that. I started to think about taxes and names of the taxes. Tell me about good law. What did I say? Good law in your country. And I started to think about taxes and their tax system in here. I overthought about it. Never mind. It was a bit stressful for me. So I chunked a lot, and I didn't speak fluently as I could have, as I should have. And to be honest with you, the mark I got was totally justified. In my opinion, but I said, what the hell? I'll try to go for the remark.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I was exhausted started preparing over again for the test. It was 2 intensive months, and I started to prepare, but then I got their result. It was quick because there were New Year's, and about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. They say on their rules that it might take up to 8 weeks.
Wow.
But I got the notice after 2 weeks that they checked it again, and they hired my score from 6.5 to 7 in speaking.
Wow,
and
excellent.
It wasn't enough for me, so now I'm so much relieved because this IELTS, this horrible IELTS. It's a horrible test, honestly.
Okay. I will ask you. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for your honesty there. So, Anna, can I just ask?
Sorry, it's my.
No worries, no problem.
She's watching Shrek and she's.
Okay. No worries. So, Anna,
yeah.
Your initial motivation to go and get a remark was that you didn't want to do the whole test again, so you just thought, right, I'm just going to go for a remark. Okay, but so you didn't actually feel that you deserved a 6.5?
No, I did feel because that I have the ability to speak better, because it was a proven fact that in the first exam I got 7.5 in speaking. So right. I honestly felt that my speaking generally wasn't that bad, that I can speak in the level of 7.
Right.
But in this specific test, I did do not so good. I spoke abruptly and with pauses, and I searched for words. So in my opinion, I deserved what I got, but I'm glad that they had the mercy on me and raised my score.
That's excellent. And by the way, when you apply for the remark, do you have the opportunity to write why you're applying for the remark, or why they should up your score?
It was a British, there are 2 IELTS, right? IDP and the BC. And I applied for the BC because that's the test, my test was. No, you just circle the part or parts that you want to them to be remarked. It's the same price if you want to for all the parts or just one of the parts. It's the same price, but if the score changes, they return your money for for the remark process, because it costs as nearly as much as the exam.
Yeah, it's quite risky, isn't it? It's quite risky. Yeah, I'm guessing that in your situation that they probably saw that in the past you have got a 7.5 and you are capable at a 7.5 level. So to bump it up from a 6.5 to a 7 isn't going to be a major risk from their side, I imagine.
Maybe, and also I got 9 in both reading and listening. So maybe someone nice after Christmas in a good mood.
Exactly, that's a good tip. Yeah, apply for remarks at the holiday season.
In this time of year, right? No, I have no tips at all. If someone has the money and can afford themselves, so if in the worst case they just lose their money. So
yeah, that's a fair point. Okay then, Anna. Well, I think we're coming towards the end of the interview now. Do you have anything you'd like to share with the students? Any tips or anything you'd like to add?
Never neglect any part. Be prepared for both 4 parts simultaneously. even though many struggle with the writing and speaking, it's essential to practice all 4 parts towards the exam, and not focusing on any one of them. Maybe to focus more on something that they're weaker at. But if someone thinks I'm good in reading, don't think that, because the tips that you give on reading are essential, are crucial to manage to read in time, because we have only 1 hour, and in this hour you have to also write the answers in the answer sheet. It's not so easy, even the reading, so don't neglect any part. That's
Absolutely. Excellent tips there, excellent tips. And I remember I was speaking with an ex-IELTS examiner once who had turned into being like an IELTS coach, and she said exactly the same as you just said. You know, like never neglect a section and keep them all sort of like up to a high level by practicing them all and giving them all equal amounts of time. So excellent point there, Anna.
Thank you a lot, Ben. Thanks. I'll definitely
welcome.
recommend if I have friends that are in the same process. I'll definitely recommend you.
Thank you very much. But also, well done to you, Anna, and well done for being so tenacious and so determined. I love it I love hearing stories about students who just absolutely convinced and prepared and doing whatever it takes to get the exam and just get it out of the way, just in and out.
There are students that do exam after exam and take them forever, for like a year. But if you're focused, you can totally do it in 2 months, intensive months of studying. And the fact that I did it, and I repeat, my English is not so perfect. The fact that I did it, anyone in this level around it can do it.
Excellent point there. Excellent point, Anna. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.